Question 1. The review process indicates that the implementation of VMware Workspace 122X is scheduled to commence next quarter. To ensure a successful and secure deployment, what is the most critical initial step to undertake regarding the potential effects of this new platform on the existing IT environment and business operations? Option A. Assign the entire responsibility for the impact assessment to the VMware implementation partner without independent internal review. Option B. Conduct a brief technical review of Workspace ONE features and functionalities, focusing solely on its compatibility with current hardware. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the potential effects on end users, existing applications, network infrastructure, security policies, and compliance requirements and develop mitigation strategies. Option D. Proceed with the implementation based on the vendor's provided documentation and assume that any issues will be addressed post-deployment. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the potential effects on end users, existing applications, network infrastructure, security policies and compliance requirements, and develop mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT environments where a new technology, VMware Workspace ONE, is being implemented. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the implementation adheres to the organization's established impact assessment procedures, which are designed to proactively identify and mitigate potential risks. Without a thorough impact assessment, the organization risks unforeseen disruptions to existing services, security vulnerabilities, compliance issues, and user dissatisfaction. The professional challenge is to balance the benefits of the new technology with the need for due diligence and risk management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive impact assessment that considers all relevant aspects of the organization's IT infrastructure and business operations. This includes evaluating the potential effects on end users, existing applications, network infrastructure, security policies, and compliance requirements. By systematically identifying potential impacts and developing mitigation strategies, the organization can ensure a smoother and more secure deployment of VMware Workspace ONE. This aligns with best practices in IT project management and risk management, which are implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate due diligence and responsible technology adoption. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the implementation without any formal impact assessment, relying solely on the vendor's documentation. This is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses critical internal risk evaluation processes. It fails to account for the unique configuration and operational context of the specific organization, potentially leading to unforeseen conflicts and security gaps. This approach disregards the principle of organizational responsibility for technology deployments and could violate internal governance policies. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial assessment that only considers the technical aspects of Workspace ONE, neglecting the impact on users and business processes. This is flawed because technology implementations are not solely technical endeavors. They have significant human and operational dimensions. Ignoring these aspects can lead to poor user adoption, decreased productivity, and failure to achieve the intended business benefits. This approach demonstrates a lack of holistic thinking and a failure to adhere to comprehensive risk management principles. A third incorrect approach is to delegate the entire impact assessment to the implementation vendor without independent verification or oversight. While vendors possess technical expertise, their primary focus is on successful product deployment, not necessarily on the long-term operational and security implications for the client organization. This abdication of responsibility can lead to a biased assessment that overlooks critical organizational-specific risks. It fails to uphold the organization's duty of care and due diligence in managing its IT environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured and systematic approach to impact assessments. This involves defining the scope of the assessment, identifying stakeholders, gathering information, analyzing potential impacts, developing mitigation plans, and documenting findings. The decision-making process should prioritize risk identification and mitigation, ensuring that all potential consequences of a technology implementation are understood and addressed before deployment. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining operational stability, security, and compliance. Question 2. The analysis reveals that a significant number of new mobile devices and cloud-based applications are being introduced into the corporate environment, with the intention of integrating them into the VMware Workspace 122 X professional deployment. However, no formal assessment of the potential impact of these additions on existing security policies, user access controls, or overall system stability has been conducted. Which of the following represents the most prudent and professionally responsible course of action to ensure a secure and effective integration? Option A. Immediately proceed with the integration of the new devices and applications into Workspace ONE, prioritizing speed of deployment to meet immediate business needs and address any issues that arise post-implementation. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential security vulnerabilities, operational disruptions, and compliance risks associated with the new devices and applications before proceeding with their integration into Workspace ONE. Option C. Focus exclusively on the technical configuration of Workspace ONE to support the new devices and applications, assuming that existing security policies will automatically extend to these new endpoints. Option D. Defer the integration of new devices and applications until a complete overhaul of the entire Workspace ONE infrastructure can be completed to ensure a perfectly synchronized and secure environment. The correct answer is A. Immediately proceed with the integration of the new devices and applications into Workspace ONE, prioritizing speed of deployment to meet immediate business needs and address any issues that arise post-implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT governance, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of a diverse user base and a variety of endpoints. The introduction of new mobile devices and cloud applications without a prior impact assessment creates a significant risk of introducing vulnerabilities, disrupting existing workflows, and failing to comply with internal policies or external regulations. The professional challenge lies in proactively identifying and mitigating these risks before they manifest as security incidents or operational failures, ensuring that the Workspace ONE deployment aligns with business objectives and security posture. Correct approach analysis. A comprehensive impact assessment is the cornerstone of responsible IT deployment and management. This approach ensures that all potential consequences of introducing new technologies or configurations are thoroughly evaluated. For Workspace 122 X Professional, this involves understanding how new device types and cloud applications will interact with existing infrastructure, security policies, and user access controls. It allows for the identification of potential conflicts, security gaps, and resource needs. By proactively addressing these findings, IT professionals can design and implement Workspace ONE configurations that are secure, compliant, and user-friendly, thereby representing best professional practice. This aligns with the principle of risk management, a fundamental tenet of IT governance and security frameworks, ensuring that the organization's digital assets are protected and that operations are not unduly hindered. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing new device types and cloud applications without a prior impact assessment is a direct violation of sound IT governance principles. It represents a failure to conduct due diligence and proactively manage risk. This approach can lead to security vulnerabilities, such as unpatched devices or misconfigured access controls, which could expose sensitive data. It also risks operational disruption if the new technologies are incompatible with existing systems or if users are not adequately trained. From a regulatory perspective, depending on the industry and data handled, this oversight could lead to non-compliance with data protection regulations, resulting in fines and reputational damage. Focusing solely on the technical deployment of Workspace ONE without considering the broader implications for user experience and existing workflows is also an incomplete approach. While technical proficiency is crucial, neglecting the human element and operational context can lead to user resistance, reduced productivity, and increased support overhead. This can indirectly create security risks if users attempt to bypass controls to achieve their work. Prioritizing immediate deployment to meet perceived business urgency without a structured assessment overlooks the potential for long-term problems. While agility is valued, it should not come at the expense of thorough planning and risk mitigation. This approach can result in a hasty deployment that is difficult to secure, manage, or scale effectively, ultimately hindering rather than helping the business. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-based approach to IT deployments. This involves a phased methodology that begins with understanding the business requirements and potential impacts. For Workspace 1, this means conducting a thorough impact assessment that covers technical, security, operational, and user experience aspects. This assessment should inform the design, configuration, and rollout strategy. Regular review and adaptation of policies and configurations based on ongoing monitoring and evolving threats are also critical. This proactive and holistic approach ensures that technology investments deliver value while maintaining a strong security posture and regulatory compliance. Question 3. Process analysis reveals that a VMware Workspace ONE environment is being considered for an upgrade to a new mobile device management (MDM) solution. Which of the following approaches to assessing the impact of this change best aligns with professional IT governance principles? Option A. Focus primarily on the technical deployment steps and vendor-provided implementation guides to ensure a swift rollout of the new MDM solution. Option B. Prioritize the evaluation of potential cost savings and efficiency gains offered by the new MDM solution, deferring detailed analysis of other impacts until after deployment. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive assessment that evaluates the technical, operational, security, and user experience implications of the new MDM solution, including potential risks and mitigation strategies. Option D. Rely exclusively on the recommendations and compatibility reports provided by the MDM solution vendor to validate its suitability for the existing environment. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive assessment that evaluates the technical, operational, security, and user experience implications of the new MDM solution, including potential risks and mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT governance where the introduction of new technology, specifically a new mobile device management (MDM) solution within VMware Workspace ONE, necessitates a thorough impact assessment. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the assessment is comprehensive, considers all relevant stakeholders and potential risks, and aligns with established best practices and regulatory requirements, even if not explicitly stated as a specific jurisdiction for this exam. The absence of a defined jurisdiction means the focus must be on universal IT governance principles and the implied regulatory framework of a professional IT environment. A superficial assessment could lead to security vulnerabilities, compliance issues, operational disruptions, and user dissatisfaction, all of which carry significant business and reputational risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and multifaceted impact assessment that considers technical, operational, security, and user experience aspects. This includes evaluating the potential effects on existing infrastructure, data privacy, compliance with internal policies, and any applicable external regulations, even if not specified for this exam. The principle of compliance is universal, and the training needs of end users and IT staff. A robust assessment would involve identifying potential risks, developing mitigation strategies, and documenting findings to inform decision-making. This aligns with the principle of due diligence and responsible technology deployment, ensuring that the benefits of the new MDM solution are realized without introducing unacceptable risks. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on the technical deployment of the MDM solution without considering its broader implications is a significant failure. This approach neglects the operational impact on end users, potential security gaps introduced by misconfigurations, and the compliance implications of managing sensitive data on mobile devices. It represents a reactive rather than proactive stance, increasing the likelihood of unforeseen problems. Prioritizing the cost savings of the new MDM solution above all other considerations is also professionally unacceptable. While cost is a factor, it should not overshadow critical aspects like security, user productivity, and compliance. Assessment that is biased towards financial benefits without adequately weighing risks and other impacts is inherently flawed and can lead to decisions that are detrimental to the organization in the long run. Implementing the MDM solution based on vendor recommendations alone without independent validation or a thorough internal assessment is another critical failure. While vendor expertise is valuable, it is not a substitute for an organization's own due diligence. This approach risks overlooking unique organizational requirements, existing infrastructure incompatibilities, or specific security policies that the vendor may not be aware of or prioritize. It bypasses the essential step of understanding how the solution will function within the specific context of the organization. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to impact assessments. This involves defining the scope of the assessment clearly, identifying all relevant stakeholders, IT, security, legal, business units, end users, and employing a risk-based methodology. The process should involve data gathering through interviews, documentation review, and technical analysis. Findings should be documented comprehensively, including identified impacts, risks, and recommended mitigation strategies. A critical part of the decision-making process is to present these findings to relevant decision makers in a clear and concise manner, enabling informed choices that balance technological advancement with organizational security, operational efficiency, and compliance. Question 4. The evaluation methodology shows that an IT administrator is tasked with securing corporate data accessed by employees using their personally owned mobile devices, BYOD, within the VMware Workspace 122X environment. The administrator needs to implement a policy that balances robust data protection with employee privacy, considering the regulatory framework and best practices for BYOD management. Which of the following approaches best addresses this requirement? Option A. Implement a policy that enables remote wipe of the entire device, including all personal data, if a security incident is detected. Option B. Configure Workspace ONE to broadly monitor all applications and user activities on the device, regardless of whether they are corporate or personal. Option C. Disable all security policies for BYOD devices to avoid any potential privacy concerns, allowing unrestricted access to corporate resources. Option D. Deploy granular policies that focus on securing corporate applications and data through containerization and conditional access, while respecting the privacy of personal data and applications. The correct answer is A. Implement a policy that enables remote wipe of the entire device, including all personal data, if a security incident is detected. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise mobility management, balancing user privacy with the organization's need for security and compliance. The IT administrator must implement a policy that effectively protects corporate data without unduly infringing on employee privacy, especially when dealing with personally owned devices. The difficulty lies in identifying the precise boundaries of acceptable monitoring and control within the VMware Workspace ONE framework, considering potential legal and ethical implications. The administrator needs to navigate the complexities of data access, device usage, and the potential for misuse of monitoring capabilities. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging Workspace ONE granular policy controls to enforce security measures specifically on corporate data and applications, while minimizing access to personal data and device functions. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and data minimization, which are often implicitly or explicitly supported by privacy regulations. By focusing on containerization, application-level policies, and conditional access based on device posture and compliance, the administrator ensures that corporate data remains secure without compromising the privacy of the user's personal information or activities on their BYOD device. This approach respects the employee's expectation of privacy on their personal device, while fulfilling the organization's security obligations. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a policy that broadly enables remote wipe of the entire device, including personal data, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action exceeds the scope of protecting corporate assets and encroaches upon personal property rights and privacy expectations, potentially violating data protection laws that mandate proportionality and necessity for data access and control. Enabling comprehensive device-wide monitoring of all applications and user activity, regardless of whether they are corporate or personal, represents another regulatory and ethical breach. Such broad surveillance can be deemed excessive and intrusive, violating privacy principles and potentially contravening regulations that require transparency and consent for data collection. Disabling all security policies for BYOD devices to avoid privacy concerns, while seemingly user-friendly, creates a substantial security risk. This approach fails to meet the organization's duty of care to protect its data and systems. potentially leading to data breaches and noncompliance with internal security standards and external regulatory requirements for data protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing the protection of corporate data and intellectual property. This involves understanding the capabilities of Workspace ONE to implement targeted security controls. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying critical corporate data and applications that require protection. 2. Assessing the risks associated with BYOD devices accessing this data. 3. Evaluating Workspace ONE features that can secure corporate data without compromising personal privacy, e.g., app wrapping, data loss prevention policies, conditional access. 4. Consulting with legal and compliance teams to ensure policies align with relevant privacy regulations and organizational policies. 5. Communicating clearly with users about the implemented policies and the rationale behind them. Question 5. During the evaluation of a new compliance mandate requiring enhanced data protection for sensitive customer information accessed via mobile devices, a VMware Workspace ONE administrator is tasked with configuring access policies. The organization operates under strict U.S. federal regulations that govern data handling and security. The administrator needs to implement controls that satisfy these regulations while minimizing disruption to end-user productivity. The administrator has identified several potential configuration strategies. Which of the following strategies best aligns with U.S. federal regulatory requirements for data protection and security in this scenario? Option A. Implement granular conditional access policies that evaluate device compliance status, user location, and application sensitivity before granting access to data. Option B. Disable all remote access capabilities for mobile devices to eliminate any potential data leakage vectors. Option C. Remove all data loss prevention, DLP, policies to simplify user access and reduce the likelihood of accidental policy violations. Option D. Rely solely on endpoint detection and response EDR, solutions to monitor for and react to any data exfiltration attempts after they occur. The correct answer is A. Implement granular conditional access policies that evaluate device compliance status, user location, and application sensitivity before granting access to data. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between enabling user productivity and maintaining robust security posture within a regulated environment. The need to balance these competing demands requires careful judgment, a thorough understanding of the VMware Workspace ONE platform's capabilities, and strict adherence to the specific regulatory framework governing the organization's operations. The chosen regulatory framework for this exam is U.S. federal regulations as they apply to enterprise IT environments, particularly those involving sensitive data. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a layered security strategy that leverages the advanced features of VMware Workspace ONE to enforce granular access controls and data protection policies without unduly hindering legitimate user workflows. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are foundational to U.S. federal cybersecurity mandates like NIST SB 800-53. Specifically, utilizing conditional access policies based on device compliance and user context directly addresses the requirement to protect sensitive information while allowing authorized access. This proactive and policy-driven method ensures that security controls are dynamically applied based on risk, a key tenet of modern cybersecurity frameworks. An incorrect approach that involves broadly disabling security features to improve user experience is professionally unacceptable. This directly violates the spirit and letter of U.S. federal regulations that mandate the protection of information systems and data. Such an action would create significant vulnerabilities, increasing the risk of unauthorized access, data breaches, and non-compliance penalties. It demonstrates a failure to understand the critical role of security controls in maintaining operational integrity and protecting organizational assets. Another incorrect approach, which is to implement overly restrictive policies that prevent users from accessing necessary resources, is also professionally unsound. While security is paramount, an organization must also ensure business continuity and employee productivity. Policies that are so stringent they impede legitimate work can lead to workarounds, shadow IT, and user frustration, ultimately undermining the overall security and operational goals. This approach fails to strike the necessary balance and can be seen as a failure to adequately consider the practical implications of security measures on the user base, potentially leading to a less secure environment as users seek to circumvent controls. Finally, an approach that relies solely on reactive security measures, such as only responding to incidents after they occur, is insufficient. U.S. federal regulations emphasize a proactive and preventative approach to cybersecurity. While incident response is a critical component of a comprehensive security program, it should not be the sole strategy. Relying only on reactive measures means an organization is constantly playing catch-up, increasing the likelihood of significant damage before an incident is detected and addressed. This demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to implement robust preventative controls. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, a clear understanding of the organization's regulatory obligations, and a comprehensive evaluation of the available tools and technologies. Professionals must engage in a continuous cycle of policy review and refinement, balancing security requirements with business needs. This involves consulting with stakeholders, understanding user workflows, and leveraging the advanced capabilities of platforms like VMware Workspace ONE to implement intelligent, context-aware security controls. Question 6. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive understanding of regulatory landscapes when extending a VMware Workspace ONE deployment to a new international market with distinct data privacy laws. A company is planning to expand its operations into a region governed by the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, equivalent laws. Which of the following strategies best ensures compliance and protects user privacy within the Workspace ONE environment? Option A. Assume existing Workspace ONE configurations are sufficient for the new region, as they are designed for enterprise-grade security and privacy. Option B. Prioritize immediate deployment and operational rollout in the new region, deferring any detailed review of local data privacy regulations until after the initial launch. Option C. Implement the most stringent privacy settings available within Workspace ONE across all devices and users in the new region to err on the side of caution. Option D. Conduct a thorough audit of the new jurisdiction's data privacy laws and map them to Workspace ONE data handling, consent management, and security features. Then configure policies accordingly. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough audit of the new jurisdiction's data privacy laws and map them to Workspace ONE data handling, consent management, and security features, then configure policies accordingly. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise mobility management, where a company is expanding its operations into a new geographical region with distinct data privacy regulations. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the Workspace ONE deployment, specifically its data handling and user privacy features, remains compliant with the new jurisdiction's laws without compromising the existing operational efficiency or security posture. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for significant legal and financial penalties for non-compliance, as well as reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and thorough assessment of the new jurisdiction's data privacy laws and their implications for Workspace ONE data collection, processing, and storage. This includes understanding requirements related to user consent, data localization, data subject rights, and breach notification. Implementing Workspace ONE features that align with these regulations, such as granular access control, data encryption, and privacy-focused configurations, demonstrates best professional practice. This approach ensures that the deployment is not only compliant but also ethically sound, respecting user privacy as mandated by law. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that the existing Workspace ONE configurations, designed for the original jurisdiction, are automatically compliant in the new region. This fails to acknowledge that data privacy laws are jurisdiction-specific and can vary significantly. This oversight represents a regulatory failure by neglecting to perform due diligence on local compliance requirements. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize immediate operational continuity over regulatory compliance by delaying the review and adjustment of Workspace ONE policies. This is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It prioritizes business expediency over legal obligations and user rights, potentially exposing the organization to legal repercussions and eroding user trust. A third incorrect approach is to implement broad, overly restrictive privacy settings across the entire workspace one deployment without a nuanced understanding of the new regulations. While seemingly cautious, this can lead to an unnecessarily degraded user experience and operational inefficiencies, and it may not even achieve the intended compliance if it doesn't address the specific nuances of the local laws. This approach demonstrates a lack of analytical depth in understanding the regulatory framework and its practical application within Workspace ONE. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to international expansion involving Workspace ONE. This begins with a comprehensive legal and regulatory review of the target jurisdiction. Subsequently, a gap analysis should be performed to identify discrepancies between current Workspace ONE configurations and the new regulatory requirements. Based on this analysis, a tailored implementation plan should be developed, focusing on specific Workspace ONE features and policies that address compliance needs. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment are crucial to adapt to any changes in regulations or business requirements. Question 7. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in failed user authentication attempts originating from an external IP address that has not been previously associated with authorized access, prompting an immediate review of potential security vulnerabilities. Option A. Initiate a detailed investigation by correlating the anomalous IP address and failed login attempts with known user accounts, recent system access logs, and any active change management tickets to determine the nature of the activity before taking further action. Option B. Send an immediate alert to all senior management and the IT security team detailing the potential breach without conducting any preliminary investigation. Option C. Log the event and continue monitoring without further immediate action, assuming it is a low-priority, non-critical alert. Option D. Immediately block the external IP address from accessing any organizational resources to prevent any potential unauthorized access. The correct answer is A. Initiate a detailed investigation by correlating the anomalous IP address and failed login attempts with known user accounts, recent system access logs, and any active change management tickets to determine the nature of the activity before taking further action. Explanation. The monitoring system demonstrates an anomaly in user login patterns, specifically a surge in failed login attempts from a single IP address originating outside the organization's typical geographic operational zones. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a rapid and accurate assessment of potential security threats versus legitimate, albeit unusual, user activity. The challenge lies in balancing the need for immediate security response with the risk of disrupting legitimate business operations or causing undue alarm. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is not explicitly stated, therefore. General best practices for IT security and data privacy, aligned with common professional standards, will be applied. The correct approach represents best professional practice by prioritizing a systematic investigation that involves correlating the anomalous activity with known user accounts and recent system changes. This aligns with the principle of due diligence in cybersecurity, aiming to identify the root cause without immediate, potentially disruptive, escalation. It respects the need for evidence-based decision-making, which is crucial for maintaining operational integrity and trust. This approach is ethically sound as it avoids premature accusations and minimizes potential negative impacts on users. An incorrect approach that involves immediately blocking the IP address without further investigation is professionally unacceptable. This is because it fails to account for potential false positives, such as a legitimate user experiencing network issues or a shared IP address being used by multiple individuals. Such an action could lead to the denial of service for legitimate users, impacting business operations and potentially violating service-level agreements. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of thoroughness and could be seen as an overreaction, damaging user confidence. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the alert due to its perceived low probability of being a genuine threat, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates negligence and a failure to adhere to security best practices. Ignoring potential security incidents, regardless of initial perceived probability, can lead to significant breaches, data loss, and reputational damage. This approach violates the ethical obligation to protect organizational assets and user data. A third incorrect approach, which is to immediately notify all stakeholders, including senior management and potentially external parties, without a preliminary assessment, is also professionally unsound. While transparency is important, premature and unverified alerts can cause unnecessary panic, divert critical resources, and undermine the credibility of the security team. This approach lacks the professional judgment required to filter and contextualize security events before broad communication. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a tiered response: initial detection and logging, followed by automated correlation and analysis. If the anomaly persists or exhibits characteristics of a genuine threat, a manual investigation should be initiated. This investigation should involve cross-referencing with user directories, network logs, and recent change management records. Only after a reasonable degree of certainty regarding the nature of the threat should escalation and remediation actions be taken. This systematic approach ensures that responses are proportionate, effective, and minimize collateral damage. Question 8. Regulatory review indicates that VMware Workspace 122 professional environments are increasingly being leveraged for managing sensitive user data. A new feature is proposed that promises significant operational efficiencies by enhancing data synchronization across devices. However, the technical documentation for this feature is vague regarding its data handling protocols and the specific types of user information it will access and transmit. Considering the paramount importance of data privacy and regulatory compliance, what is the most prudent approach to evaluating and implementing this new feature? Option A. Prioritize the technical functionality and performance benefits of the feature, deferring any detailed privacy or compliance review until after widespread adoption. Option B. Implement the feature immediately to capitalize on the promised operational efficiencies, assuming that the vendor's standard security measures are sufficient. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks, followed by a phased rollout with continuous monitoring and user feedback mechanisms. Option D. Deploy the feature to a small, select group of IT administrators for initial testing, without a formal plan for broader assessment or user impact analysis. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks, followed by a phased rollout with continuous monitoring and user feedback mechanisms. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between an organization's desire for streamlined IT operations and the critical need to maintain data privacy and security, especially when dealing with sensitive user information managed by VMware Workspace 1. The challenge lies in balancing the efficiency gains of a new feature with the potential risks of unauthorized access or data leakage, which could have significant regulatory and reputational consequences. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any technological advancement aligns with established data protection principles and compliance mandates. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and a phased rollout strategy, prioritizing user privacy and data security. This aligns with best professional practices by proactively identifying potential vulnerabilities before widespread deployment. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that only necessary data is collected and processed for legitimate purposes. The phased rollout allows for continuous monitoring and adjustment, mitigating the impact of any unforeseen issues. This approach is ethically sound as it demonstrates a commitment to user trust and responsible data stewardship, and it is compliant with data protection regulations that mandate risk-based approaches to data processing and security. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the feature immediately without a comprehensive risk assessment and user impact analysis is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the potential for data breaches or privacy violations, which directly contravenes data protection laws that require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure data security. It also fails to uphold the ethical obligation to protect user data and maintain trust. Deploying the feature only to a small, non-representative group of users without a clear plan for broader assessment or feedback is also professionally unacceptable. While seemingly cautious, this approach lacks a structured methodology for evaluating the feature's impact on the wider user base and its compliance with regulations. It creates a false sense of security and delays necessary remediation, potentially exposing a larger group to risks later. This is ethically questionable as it doesn't proactively address potential harm to all users, focusing solely on the technical functionality of the feature without considering its implications for user privacy and data governance is a critical oversight. This narrow focus ignores the broader regulatory landscape and ethical responsibilities associated with managing user data. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the interconnectedness of technology, privacy, and compliance, leading to potential violations of data protection principles and legal requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, privacy-by-design approach when implementing new technologies within a managed environment like VMware Workspace 1. This involves 1. Understanding the regulatory requirements applicable to the data being managed. 2. Conducting a thorough data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks. 3. Developing a phased deployment plan that includes pilot testing, user feedback mechanisms, and continuous monitoring. 4. Ensuring clear communication with users about any changes affecting their data. 5. Establishing robust incident response plans. This systematic process ensures that technological advancements are implemented responsibly, ethically, and in compliance with all relevant regulations. Question 9. Operational review demonstrates a critical security vulnerability has been identified in a widely used enterprise application deployed across a diverse fleet of VMware Workspace 1 managed devices. A security patch is available, but its deployment requires a device restart. Considering the potential for widespread disruption and the need to mitigate the security risk promptly, which deployment strategy best balances security imperatives with operational stability and user experience? Option A. Prioritize patching only the devices identified as high-risk or critical infrastructure, leaving other devices unpatched until a less disruptive deployment window can be identified. Option B. Initiate an immediate mandatory rollout of the security patch to all managed devices, requiring a restart upon installation. To address the vulnerability as quickly as possible, Option C. Deploy the patch as a mandatory update that requires immediate user intervention and restart, irrespective of the user's current activity or device importance, to ensure rapid remediation. Option D. Conduct a phased rollout of the security patch, beginning with a pilot group of representative devices, followed by broader deployment segments based on risk and criticality, allowing for monitoring and adjustment. The correct answer is B. Initiate an immediate mandatory rollout of the security patch to all managed devices, requiring a restart upon installation, to address the vulnerability as quickly as possible. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise mobility management, where a critical security update for a widely used application needs to be deployed across a diverse fleet of managed devices. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of the security fix with the potential disruption to end users, and the need to maintain compliance with internal policies and potentially external regulations regarding data access and device availability. The risk of a zero-day exploit targeting the unpatched vulnerability necessitates swift action, but a poorly executed deployment could lead to widespread service outages, user frustration, and potential data integrity issues if applications crash or data is corrupted during the update process. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased rollout strategy, beginning with a pilot group of devices representing different device types, operating systems, and user roles. This allows for early detection of any compatibility issues or unexpected behavior caused by the update in a controlled environment. Following successful pilot testing, the update is then deployed to broader user segments, potentially prioritizing critical business units or devices with higher security risk profiles. This staged deployment minimizes the impact of any unforeseen problems, allows for iterative refinement of the deployment process, and ensures that the security vulnerability is addressed as quickly as possible without causing significant operational disruption. This aligns with best practices for change management and risk mitigation in IT operations, ensuring business continuity and data security. Incorrect approaches analysis. Deploying the update immediately to all devices without any testing or phased rollout is a high-risk strategy. This approach disregards the potential for unforeseen compatibility issues, which could lead to widespread device failures, application crashes, and significant operational downtime. Such a failure could violate internal service level agreements and potentially lead to data loss or corruption, which could have regulatory implications if sensitive data is involved. Implementing a mandatory update that requires immediate user intervention and restart on all devices, regardless of their current usage or importance, is also problematic. This approach prioritizes speed over user experience and operational continuity. It can lead to users losing unsaved work, critical business processes being interrupted, and a significant increase in help desk calls. This lack of consideration for user impact and business criticality can be seen as a failure in professional IT management and could indirectly lead to compliance issues if critical business functions are severely hampered. Focusing solely on patching the vulnerability without considering the impact on application functionality or user experience is an incomplete solution. While addressing the security risk is paramount, a successful deployment also requires ensuring that the updated application functions as expected and does not negatively impact user productivity. Neglecting this aspect can lead to user workarounds that bypass security controls or create new vulnerabilities, undermining the initial security objective. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based, phased approach to critical updates. This involves understanding the potential impact of both the vulnerability and the deployment process. The decision-making process should prioritize security while also considering operational continuity, user impact, and compliance requirements. A thorough risk assessment, followed by a well-defined pilot program and a staged rollout, is essential for managing complex deployments effectively and ethically. Question 10. The performance metrics show a noticeable degradation in application delivery times and an increase in authentication errors for users accessing resources managed by VMware Workspace ONE. Considering the need to maintain a secure and compliant environment, which of the following diagnostic and remediation strategies best aligns with professional best practices for addressing these issues? Option A. Focus exclusively on client-side device diagnostics and user-ported issues, assuming the server-side infrastructure is functioning optimally. Option B. Immediately roll back recent UEM policy changes and disable non-essential security features within Workspace ONE access to quickly restore performance. Option C. Prioritize a deep dive into Workspace ONE access logs and authentication service health, correlating findings with UEM console performance indicators and network latency to identify bottlenecks in the authentication and application delivery chain. Option D. Initiate a full system reboot of all Workspace ONE components and associated infrastructure without prior analysis of logs or performance data. The correct answer is C. Prioritize a deep dive into Workspace ONE access logs and authentication service health, correlating findings with UEM console performance indicators and network latency to identify bottlenecks in the authentication and application delivery chain. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in application launch times and a higher than usual number of user-reported login failures within the VMware Workspace ONE environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts end-user productivity and satisfaction, potentially leading to business disruption. The administrator must identify the root cause quickly and implement a solution that not only resolves the immediate performance issues, but also adheres to best practices for system stability and security, all while considering the specific regulatory framework for the 2V0-6223 exam. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation of the Workspace ONE infrastructure, focusing on components directly impacting application delivery and authentication. This includes analyzing the Workspace ONE UEM console logs, Workspace ONE access logs, and potentially the underlying infrastructure, network, identity provider. The goal is to pinpoint whether the issue stems from UEM policy processing, authentication service latency, application packaging, or resource constraints. Implementing a solution that addresses the identified bottleneck, such as optimizing UEM policies, tuning Workspace ONE access configurations, or scaling underlying resources, represents best professional practice. This approach is aligned with the principles of maintaining a secure, reliable, and performant endpoint management system, which is a core tenet of professional IT administration. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement broad, untested changes without proper diagnosis. For example, randomly disabling security features in Workspace ONE access to speed things up would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could compromise the confidentiality and integrity of user data, violating principles of data protection and security mandated by IT governance frameworks. Another incorrect approach would be to solely focus on client-side troubleshooting without examining the server-side infrastructure. This would be inefficient and could lead to prolonged downtime, failing to meet service-level agreements, and potentially incurring financial penalties or reputational damage. Furthermore, making changes without documenting them or testing them in a staging environment introduces a high risk of unintended consequences, which is a failure in professional due diligence and change management. Professionals should employ a structured troubleshooting methodology. This involves clearly defining the problem, gathering relevant data, performance metrics, logs, forming hypotheses, testing those hypotheses systematically, and implementing solutions based on evidence. If a solution is implemented, it should be validated to ensure the problem is resolved and no new issues have been introduced. This iterative process, combined with a thorough understanding of the Workspace ONE architecture and its dependencies, is crucial for effective problem solving and maintaining a compliant and efficient environment. Question 11. Implementation of VMware Workspace ONE for a multinational organization with users in the European Union and the United States requires careful consideration of data residency. The IT department proposes configuring Workspace ONE to utilize global cloud services for all user data, citing efficiency and ease of management. However, the organization's legal counsel has raised concerns about potential violations of data protection regulations, particularly regarding the transfer of EU citizen data outside of the EU. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance and mitigate risk? Option A. Implement Workspace ONE using global cloud services, but instruct users to manually avoid storing sensitive personal data within the platform to reduce compliance risks. Option B. Prioritize the IT department's recommendation for global cloud services due to its perceived efficiency and ease of management, and address any potential compliance issues reactively if they arise. Option C. Proceed with the IT department's proposed configuration of global cloud services for Workspace ONE, assuming that standard cloud provider compliance measures are sufficient for all jurisdictions. Option D. Engage legal counsel to thoroughly review the applicable data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR, and conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the feasibility and necessary configurations for Workspace ONE to comply with data residency requirements before proceeding with global cloud service utilization. Correct answer is D. Engage legal counsel to thoroughly review the applicable data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR, and conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the feasibility and necessary configurations for Workspace ONE to comply with data residency requirements before proceeding with global cloud service utilization. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to managing sensitive user data within a Workspace ONE environment, specifically concerning data residency and compliance with data protection regulations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the organization's operational needs with the legal and ethical obligations to protect user privacy and adhere to jurisdictional data handling requirements. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen solution not only meets technical requirements, but also maintains compliance and user trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory framework before implementing technical solutions. By engaging legal counsel and conducting a comprehensive risk assessment, the organization demonstrates a commitment to compliance and data protection. This proactive stance ensures that any deployment aligns with data residency laws, such as GDPR or similar regional regulations, by identifying and mitigating potential risks associated with data processing and storage locations. This approach fosters trust with users and avoids potential legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that involves deploying Workspace ONE with default global data handling settings without verifying jurisdictional compliance is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes data protection regulations by risking the unauthorized transfer or storage of personal data outside of permitted regions. Such an action could lead to significant fines, reputational damage, and loss of user confidence. Another incorrect approach, which is to proceed with implementation based solely on IT team recommendations without legal review, ignores the critical aspect of regulatory compliance. While the IT team may have technical expertise, they may lack the specialized knowledge of data protection laws and their implications for Workspace ONE configurations. This oversight can lead to unintentional noncompliance, exposing the organization to legal liabilities. A further incorrect approach, focusing on user convenience over data residency requirements, is also professionally unacceptable. While user experience is important, it must not supersede legal and ethical obligations regarding data privacy. Prioritizing convenience without addressing data residency can result in violations of data protection laws, leading to severe consequences. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multidisciplinary approach. First, clearly identify the specific data protection regulations applicable to the organization and its users based on their geographic locations. Second, consult with legal and compliance experts to interpret these regulations in the context of Workspace ONE deployment and data handling. Third, conduct a thorough risk assessment to understand potential compliance gaps and vulnerabilities. Fourth, design and implement technical solutions that demonstrably meet these regulatory requirements, including data residency controls. Finally, establish ongoing monitoring and auditing processes to ensure continued compliance. Question 12. Benchmark analysis indicates a critical security vulnerability has been disclosed that affects a core component of VMware Workspace ONE. The vulnerability has a high CVSS score and is actively being exploited in the wild. Your organization has a large, diverse fleet of managed devices and a complex integration with backend systems. What is the most prudent course of action to address this vulnerability? Option A. Defer the patch deployment indefinitely until a less disruptive maintenance window can be identified, prioritizing operational stability over immediate security remediation. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive risk assessment to understand the specific impact of the vulnerability on your environment, followed by a pilot deployment of the patch to a small, representative group of devices before a full rollout. Option C. Focus on implementing compensating controls, such as network segmentation and enhanced monitoring, while delaying the patch deployment until the vendor releases a more stable, updated version. Option D. Immediately deploy the vendor-provided patch to all managed devices and systems without prior testing to mitigate the risk of exploitation as quickly as possible. Correct answer is D. Immediately deploy the vendor-provided patch to all managed devices and systems without prior testing to mitigate the risk of exploitation as quickly as possible. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments where a new security vulnerability is discovered. The professional must balance the immediate need to protect sensitive data and systems with the operational impact of implementing a fix. The challenge lies in making a rapid, informed decision that minimizes risk without causing undue disruption to business operations, all while adhering to established security policies and potentially regulatory compliance requirements. The pressure to act quickly against a known threat, coupled with the potential for widespread impact, demands a structured and risk-aware approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and a phased deployment strategy. This aligns with best practices in IT security and change management. By first understanding the specific exploitability and impact of the vulnerability within the organization's unique Workspace ONE deployment, the team can tailor the remediation. A pilot deployment to a non-critical group allows for validation of the patch's effectiveness and stability before a full rollout, thereby mitigating the risk of widespread operational disruption. This methodical approach ensures that security is enhanced without compromising business continuity, a key tenet of responsible IT management. This also implicitly supports compliance with data protection regulations by ensuring the integrity and availability of systems processing sensitive information. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the patch immediately across all devices without testing introduces a significant risk of unforeseen compatibility issues or system instability. This could lead to widespread service outages, impacting productivity and potentially violating service-level agreements, or even data availability requirements under certain regulatory frameworks. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence in risk management. Delaying the patch indefinitely due to fear of disruption, without any mitigation or risk acceptance process, is also professionally unacceptable. This leaves the organization exposed to the identified vulnerability, increasing the likelihood of a security breach. This inaction can have severe legal and financial repercussions, especially if sensitive data is compromised, and would likely be viewed as a failure to meet reasonable security standards. Attempting to manually remediate individual devices is highly inefficient and prone to error in a large deployment. This approach is not scalable and does not provide a systematic solution. It also fails to address the root cause of the vulnerability and leaves the organization vulnerable to future attacks that exploit the same flaw. This demonstrates a lack of strategic thinking and an inability to manage enterprise-level security challenges effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first consulting established incident response and change management policies. A risk-based decision-making framework is crucial, involving a clear understanding of the threat, the potential impact, and the available mitigation strategies. Communication with stakeholders, including business units and management, is vital to ensure alignment and manage expectations. The goal is always to achieve the optimal balance between security posture and operational efficiency. Question 13. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual spike in network traffic originating from a specific group of managed mobile devices, potentially indicating a security incident. Which of the following actions best balances the need for security investigation with regulatory compliance regarding user data privacy? Option A. Immediately escalate the incident to external cybersecurity forensics without first attempting to gather context-specific data from the devices. Option B. Initiate a full diagnostic data dump from all affected devices to capture all system and user activity for comprehensive analysis. Option C. Scope the investigation to collect only network connection logs and process execution data directly related to the anomalous traffic, while ensuring data minimization principles are applied. Option D. Temporarily suspend all user access to the affected devices until the network traffic anomaly is fully investigated and resolved. Correct answer is B. Initiate a full diagnostic data dump from all affected devices to capture all system and user activity for comprehensive analysis. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the need for comprehensive security monitoring with the privacy rights of end users within a regulated environment. The core difficulty lies in identifying and mitigating potential security threats without inadvertently collecting or retaining sensitive personal data that is not directly relevant to the security incident. The VMware Workspace 122 X-professional must navigate the complexities of data privacy regulations, which are increasingly stringent, while ensuring the integrity and security of the managed endpoints. The pressure to respond quickly to security alerts can sometimes lead to overzealous data collection, creating a compliance risk. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a targeted and proportionate response to security alerts. This means that when the monitoring system flags a potential issue, the investigation should be scoped to collect only the data strictly necessary to confirm the threat, understand its scope, and remediate it. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental to many data privacy regulations. For example, if a device shows signs of malware, the investigation should focus on the suspicious processes, network connections, and file activity related to that malware, rather than indiscriminately collecting all user activity logs or device data. This approach ensures that the organization remains compliant with privacy laws by avoiding unnecessary data processing and respecting user privacy. Correct approach is analysis. Collecting all available telemetry data from affected devices without a specific, justified need for each data point represents a failure in data minimization. This broad collection risks capturing personal information that is not relevant to the security incident, thereby violating privacy principles and potentially contravening regulations that mandate the processing of only necessary data. Implementing automated, blanket data retention policies for all security alerts, regardless of severity or nature, also constitutes a regulatory failure. Such policies often lead to the indefinite storage of potentially sensitive data, increasing the risk of breaches and noncompliance with data retention limits stipulated by privacy laws. The principle of storage limitation requires data to be kept only as long as necessary for the purpose for which it was collected. Disabling user-specific privacy controls or logging mechanisms as a default response to a security alert is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This action infringes upon user consent and the right to privacy, which are often enshrined in data protection frameworks. Security measures should not override fundamental privacy rights without a clear, documented, and legally defensible justification. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based and privacy-aware approach to security monitoring and incident response. This involves 1. Understanding the specific data privacy regulations applicable to the organization's operating jurisdiction. 2. Establishing clear policies and procedures for security incident response that incorporate data minimization and purpose limitation principles. 3. Implementing technical controls within Workspace, one that allow for targeted data collection during investigations. 4. Regularly reviewing and auditing data collection and retention practices to ensure ongoing compliance. 5. Prioritizing user privacy and transparency, informing users about data collection practices where appropriate and legally required. 6. Seeking legal counsel when in doubt about the scope of data collection or retention in response to security incidents. Question 14. Strategic planning requires a thorough assessment of regulatory implications before the full deployment of new enterprise mobility management solutions. When implementing VMware Workspace 122X, what is the most critical step to ensure compliance with data privacy regulations? Option A. Prioritizing the technical security features of Workspace 1 without a specific focus on data privacy mandates. Option B. Implementing the solution first, and then seeking legal and compliance review of the operational procedures. Option C. Conducting a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) with legal and compliance teams prior to full deployment. Option D. Relying on the default security configurations provided by the VMware Workspace 1 vendor. The correct answer is C. Conducting a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) with legal and compliance teams prior to full deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new technologies with stringent regulatory compliance requirements. Specifically, the introduction of a new mobile device management (MDM) solution, like VMware Workspace 1, necessitates a thorough understanding of data privacy regulations. The challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen configuration and operational procedures for Workspace 1 do not inadvertently violate these regulations, which could lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The complexity arises from the nuanced interpretation of data handling, consent, and security mandates within the regulatory framework. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with legal and compliance teams to conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) before full deployment. This aligns with the principles of privacy by design and privacy by default, which are fundamental to many data protection regulations. A DPIA systematically identifies and mitigates privacy risks associated with processing personal data. For Workspace 1, this would involve scrutinizing how user data e.g., device information, application usage, location data is collected, stored, processed, and secured by the platform. By involving legal and compliance experts early, the organization ensures that the deployment strategy adheres to all applicable laws, such as those governing consent mechanisms for data collection, data minimization principles, and secure data transfer protocols. This proactive stance is the cornerstone of responsible technology adoption and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the MDM solution without a formal DPIA and relying solely on the vendor's default security settings is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the organization's responsibility to protect user data. It assumes that the vendor's defaults are compliant with all relevant regulations, which is rarely the case across diverse jurisdictions and specific organizational contexts. This could lead to violations of data minimization principles, unauthorized data processing, and inadequate consent mechanisms. Deploying the solution and then seeking legal review post-implementation is also a flawed strategy. This reactive approach significantly increases the risk of noncompliance. If the initial deployment has already incorporated noncompliant practices, remediation can be costly and disruptive. It also implies that the organization is willing to operate in a potentially noncompliant state for an extended period, which is ethically questionable and legally precarious. Focusing solely on technical security features of Workspace, one without considering the broader data privacy implications, is another common pitfall. While strong encryption and access controls are crucial, they do not, by themselves, guarantee regulatory compliance. Regulations often dictate what data can be collected, how consent is obtained, and for what purposes data can be used, aspects that are not solely addressed by technical security measures. This approach overlooks the legal and ethical obligations surrounding data handling. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with deploying enterprise solutions like VMware Workspace, one must adopt a risk-based, compliance-first mindset. The decision-making process should prioritize understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to the organization's operations and the data being handled. This involves 1. Identifying all applicable data protection regulations. 2. Understanding the specific requirements of these regulations concerning mobile device management and data processing. 3. Proactively assessing potential privacy risks through mechanisms like DPIA, involving legal and compliance stakeholders from the outset. 4. Designing and configuring the solution to meet both technical and regulatory requirements, adhering to the principles of privacy by design. 5. Establishing clear operational procedures and policies that ensure ongoing compliance. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating configurations and policies in response to evolving regulations and business needs. Question 15. Investigation of a Workspace ONE deployment reveals that sensitive customer data is being accessed and potentially stored on a variety of managed mobile devices. The organization is subject to stringent data privacy regulations that mandate data minimization and robust security controls. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance and protects sensitive data while allowing for legitimate business operations? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify sensitive data types, implement granular access controls and encryption policies within Workspace ONE, and regularly audit compliance. Option B. Disable all data synchronization features across all managed devices to prevent any potential data exposure. Option C. Ignore all user requests for data access or modification until a new, simplified policy can be drafted. Option D. Deactivate all remote wipe capabilities for all managed devices to avoid accidental data loss for users. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify sensitive data types, implement granular access controls and encryption policies within Workspace ONE, and regularly audit compliance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining robust security controls and ensuring user productivity and accessibility within a regulated environment. Need to comply with data privacy regulations, which are paramount in the context of Workspace ONE deployments, requires careful consideration of how user data is collected, stored, and accessed. The challenge lies in balancing the organization's obligation to protect sensitive information with the practicalities of end-user device management, and the potential for legitimate business use cases that might appear to conflict with strict data minimization principles. The specific regulatory framework for this exam, implied to be a general professional IT context without a specified jurisdiction, thus focusing on common best practices and ethical considerations in data handling, mandates a proactive and documented approach to data privacy. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented risk assessment and the implementation of granular access controls and data encryption policies. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and data minimization, fundamental tenets of data protection regulations. By identifying specific data types, assessing their sensitivity, and then applying targeted security measures like encryption at rest and in transit and role-based access controls within Workspace ONE, the organization demonstrates due diligence. This proactive stance ensures that only necessary data is accessed by authorized personnel and systems, and that such data is protected throughout its lifecycle. This approach is best professional practice because it is auditable, defensible, and directly addresses the core requirements of data privacy and security frameworks, minimizing the risk of breaches and regulatory noncompliance. It also allows for business needs to be met within a secure and compliant framework. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a blanket policy to disable all data synchronization features across all managed devices without a specific risk assessment or consideration for legitimate business needs is an overreach. This approach fails to acknowledge that certain data synchronization might be essential for business operations and can be secured through appropriate controls. It represents a failure to apply the principle of proportionality and can lead to significant operational disruption, potentially impacting business continuity. From a regulatory perspective, it might be seen as an overly restrictive measure that hinders legitimate business activities without a clear, documented justification based on a risk assessment. Disabling all remote wipe capabilities for all devices, regardless of their security posture or the data they contain, is a significant security and regulatory failure. Remote wipe is a critical tool for data protection in the event of device loss or theft. Failing to enable this capability exposes sensitive organizational data to unauthorized access, directly contravening data protection obligations. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of incident response and data breach mitigation strategies, creating a substantial risk of data exfiltration and subsequent regulatory penalties. Ignoring user requests for data access or modification without a clear, documented policy and process for handling such requests is also problematic. While not directly a security control failure, it can lead to noncompliance with data subject rights mandated by many privacy regulations, e.g., right to access, right to rectification. It also fosters a negative user experience and can lead to disputes. A professional approach requires a defined process for managing these requests, ensuring they are handled in a timely and compliant manner, even if the ultimate decision is to deny them based on security or legal grounds, provided such grounds are clearly articulated and documented. Professional reasoning. Professionals managing Workspace One environments must adopt a risk-based, policy-driven approach to security and compliance. This involves understanding the specific data being managed, the regulatory landscape, and the capabilities of the Workspace One platform. The decision-making process should begin with a comprehensive understanding of organizational data assets and their sensitivity. This understanding should then inform the development of granular security policies that are implemented and enforced through Workspace One. Regular review and auditing of these policies and their effectiveness are crucial. When faced with conflicting requirements, e.g., user convenience vs. security, professionals must prioritize data protection and regulatory compliance, but do so in a manner that is proportionate, documented, and considers legitimate business needs. This involves engaging with stakeholders, conducting thorough risk assessments, and implementing controls that are both effective and practical. Question 16. What factors determine the appropriate level of user data collection and retention within VMware Workspace 122? X to ensure compliance with the relevant regulatory framework for this exam. Option A. The convenience of collecting all available device and user telemetry for comprehensive monitoring. Option B. The explicit legal basis for data processing, the principle of data minimization, and the defined purpose for which the data is collected and retained. Option C. The default data collection settings provided by VMware, assuming they are designed for broad applicability. Option D. The perceived usefulness of the data for troubleshooting and performance optimization, regardless of explicit legal justification. The correct answer is B. The explicit legal basis for data processing, the principle of data minimization, and the defined purpose for which the data is collected and retained. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the operational efficiency of a Workspace One deployment with the stringent data privacy and security regulations applicable within the specified jurisdiction. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that all data handling practices, especially those involving user information and device telemetry, strictly adhere to the defined legal framework without compromising the intended functionality of the Workspace One solution. Careful judgment is required to interpret and apply these regulations to the technical configurations and operational procedures of the platform. The correct approach represents best professional practice, because it prioritizes a proactive and comprehensive understanding of the regulatory landscape. By embedding compliance checks and data minimization principles into the Workspace ONE deployment lifecycle, from initial design to ongoing management, an organization demonstrates a commitment to lawful data processing. This aligns with the fundamental principles of data protection, such as data minimization, purpose limitation, and accountability, which are often enshrined in regulatory frameworks. Specifically, ensuring that only necessary data is collected and retained, and that access controls are robustly implemented, directly addresses common regulatory concerns regarding unauthorized access and misuse of personal information. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical implementation without considering the regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence and a disregard for legal obligations. For instance, collecting excessive user telemetry data without a clear, documented, and legally permissible purpose violates data minimization principles and could lead to significant regulatory penalties. Similarly, implementing broad access privileges to sensitive data within Workspace ONE without a legitimate business need or proper authorization constitutes a breach of security and privacy regulations, potentially exposing the organization to data breaches and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach might involve relying on vendor default settings without independent verification against local regulations. This abdicates responsibility for compliance and assumes that a third-party solution inherently meets all local legal requirements, which is rarely the case and can lead to unintentional noncompliance. The professional reasoning process for navigating such situations should involve a multidisciplinary approach. First, thoroughly research and understand the specific data protection and privacy laws applicable to the jurisdiction of operation. Second, engage with legal and compliance teams early in the project lifecycle to translate regulatory requirements into actionable technical and operational controls within Workspace ONE. Third, conduct regular audits and risk assessments to ensure ongoing adherence to these controls and to identify any emerging compliance gaps. Finally, maintain comprehensive documentation of all compliance-related decisions, configurations, and procedures to demonstrate accountability. Question 17. When evaluating the security posture of a VMware Workspace ONE deployment in response to an increasing number of sophisticated phishing attacks targeting sensitive corporate data, which risk assessment approach best aligns with regulatory expectations for proactive threat mitigation and resource optimization? Option A. Perform a quick review of recent security alerts and implement ad hoc security patches as they become available, without a structured analysis of the overall risk landscape. Option B. Immediately deploy the latest endpoint detection and response EDR solution across all managed devices, assuming this will address the phishing threat comprehensively. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that involves identifying critical assets, analyzing potential threat vectors specific to the Workspace ONE environment, evaluating the likelihood and impact of identified risks, and prioritizing mitigation strategies based on the findings. Option D. Rely on industry best practice guides for endpoint security and implement all recommended controls without a specific assessment of the organization's unique threat landscape or Workspace ONE configuration. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that involves identifying critical assets, analyzing potential threat vectors specific to the Workspace ONE environment, evaluating the likelihood and impact of identified risks, and prioritizing mitigation strategies based on the findings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for enhanced security controls with the potential disruption to end-user productivity and the operational overhead of implementing new policies. The organization is facing a heightened threat landscape, necessitating a proactive risk assessment to identify and mitigate vulnerabilities within their VMware Workspace ONE environment. The challenge lies in selecting a risk assessment approach that is both comprehensive and practical, ensuring that the chosen method aligns with the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations without causing undue operational friction. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a structured, systematic evaluation of potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the Workspace ONE deployment. This method ensures that security investments are prioritized based on the likelihood and impact of identified risks, leading to a more efficient and effective security posture. It allows for the identification of critical assets, potential attack vectors, and the effectiveness of existing controls. By focusing on a qualitative and quantitative analysis of risks, the organization can make informed decisions about resource allocation and the implementation of appropriate mitigation strategies, such as granular access controls, conditional access policies, and advanced threat detection, all of which are crucial for maintaining compliance with data protection regulations and industry best practices. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing the most advanced security features available without a prior risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of strategic alignment and a disregard for the principle of proportionality in security. It can lead to overspending on unnecessary controls, increased complexity that introduces new vulnerabilities, and significant user friction, potentially impacting business operations. This approach violates the ethical obligation to manage resources responsibly and effectively. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the security practices of other organizations without a tailored assessment for the specific environment is also professionally deficient. This method lacks the rigor required for a robust risk assessment. It fails to account for the unique threat profile, existing infrastructure, and specific business requirements of the organization. Relying on assumptions or external benchmarks without internal validation can result in overlooking critical risks or implementing controls that are not relevant or effective, thereby failing to meet regulatory requirements for due diligence and risk management. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a phased approach. First, clearly define the scope of the risk assessment, including the systems, data, and processes to be evaluated. Second, identify potential threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the Workspace ONE environment and the organization's industry. Third, analyze the likelihood and impact of these risks, using a combination of qualitative and quantitative methods where appropriate. Fourth, evaluate existing controls and their effectiveness. Fifth, determine the residual risk and develop a risk treatment plan, prioritizing mitigation strategies based on their cost-effectiveness and impact on business operations. Finally, regularly review and update the risk assessment to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the environment. Question 18. Strategic planning requires a thorough understanding of how new technology deployments will affect existing operations. When planning the integration of VMware Workspace 122X across a multi-departmental organization, which of the following approaches to impact assessment best ensures a successful and compliant implementation? Option A. Conducting a comprehensive assessment that analyzes technical dependencies, security implications, data privacy considerations, and potential changes to user workflows and business processes, involving key stakeholders from all affected departments. Option B. Focusing the assessment primarily on the cost savings and efficiency gains expected from the new platform, with minimal consideration for potential disruptions or user adoption challenges. Option C. Delegating the entire impact assessment process to the IT infrastructure team, without engaging other departments or considering their specific operational needs and regulatory obligations. Option D. Prioritizing the technical configuration and deployment timeline, assuming that operational and security impacts will be managed reactively as they arise during or after the rollout. The correct answer is A. Conducting a comprehensive assessment that analyzes technical dependencies, security implications, data privacy considerations, and potential changes to user workflows and business processes, involving key stakeholders from all affected departments. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent complexity of integrating new technologies like VMware Workspace ONE into an existing IT infrastructure. The primary difficulty lies in anticipating and mitigating potential disruptions to business operations, data security, and user experience. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to identify all affected systems, processes, and stakeholders, ensuring that the deployment aligns with organizational objectives and regulatory compliance. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive and comprehensive evaluation of the proposed Workspace ONE deployment. This involves detailed analysis of technical dependencies, security implications, and potential operational changes. By systematically identifying risks and developing mitigation strategies, This approach ensures that the implementation is smooth, secure, and compliant with relevant data protection regulations. This aligns with best professional practices by prioritizing due diligence and risk management, thereby safeguarding the organization's assets and reputation. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical deployment without considering broader operational or security impacts would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to unforeseen system failures, data breaches, or noncompliance with data privacy laws, resulting in significant financial penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that neglects user training and support would likely result in low adoption rates and decreased productivity, undermining the intended benefits of the technology. Failing to involve key stakeholders in the assessment process is also a critical failure, as it can lead to overlooked requirements and resistance to change, ultimately jeopardizing the project's success. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the scope and objectives of the project. This should be followed by a thorough impact assessment that considers technical, operational, security, and user-centric factors. Engaging all relevant stakeholders, including IT, security, legal, and business units, is paramount. Risks should be identified, analyzed, and prioritized, with corresponding mitigation plans developed. Finally, continuous monitoring and evaluation throughout the deployment lifecycle are essential to adapt to evolving circumstances and ensure ongoing success. Question 19. The efficiency study reveals that the initial setup time for new user devices managed by VMware Workspace ONE is consistently exceeding the acceptable service level agreement (SLA) by over 30%. The IT team is under pressure to quickly resolve this to improve employee productivity and reduce help desk tickets. Which of the following actions best represents a professional and compliant approach to addressing this issue? Option A. Temporarily disable certain security policies and compliance checks within Workspace ONE for new device enrollments to expedite the setup process. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of Workspace ONE Intelligent Hub deployment configurations, device enrollment profiles, and application assignment policies to identify potential misconfigurations or inefficiencies causing the delay. Option C. Focus exclusively on developing and delivering enhanced end-user training materials on device setup, assuming user error is the primary cause of the extended time. Option D. Immediately allocate additional server resources to the Workspace ONE infrastructure, assuming that increased capacity will resolve the performance bottleneck. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review of Workspace ONE Intelligent Hub deployment configurations, device enrollment profiles, and application assignment policies to identify potential misconfigurations or inefficiencies causing the delay. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a significant bottleneck in the onboarding process for new users within a VMware Workspace ONE environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts user productivity, IT support overhead, and potentially the organization's ability to quickly integrate new employees or contractors. The pressure to resolve this efficiently without compromising security or compliance adds another layer of complexity. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven investigation that aligns with the principles of IT service management and regulatory compliance. By focusing on identifying the root cause of the delay through log analysis, performance monitoring, and configuration review, the IT team can implement targeted solutions. This methodical approach ensures that any changes made are effective, sustainable, and do not introduce new vulnerabilities or compliance risks. Adhering to established VMware best practices for Workspace ONE deployment and management, which are implicitly aligned with general IT governance frameworks, is crucial for maintaining a secure and efficient endpoint management solution. An incorrect approach that involves immediately increasing resource allocation without understanding the cause is professionally unacceptable. This is a reactive measure that fails to address the underlying issue and could lead to unnecessary costs and potential performance degradation if the bottleneck is software-related or misconfiguration. It bypasses the critical step of root cause analysis, which is a cornerstone of effective problem-solving and IT governance. Another incorrect approach, such as disabling security policies to speed up onboarding, represents a severe regulatory and ethical failure. Security policies are in place to protect organizational data and systems, and their arbitrary disabling creates significant vulnerabilities. This directly contravenes data protection regulations and internal security mandates, exposing the organization to data breaches, compliance violations, and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on end-user training without investigating the system itself, is also professionally flawed. While user training is important, it does not address a system-level performance issue. This approach misdiagnoses the problem and wastes resources by addressing a symptom rather than the cause, leading to continued inefficiencies and user frustration. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve 1. Clearly defining the problem and its impact. 2. Gathering data and performing root cause analysis. 3. Evaluating potential solutions based on effectiveness, efficiency, security, and compliance. 4. Implementing the chosen solution with proper testing and change management. 5. Monitoring the results and iterating as necessary. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 20. The audit findings indicate that, while sensitive user data is collected and stored within the VMware Workspace 1 UEM environment, the current access control policies are broadly defined, allowing administrative roles access to extensive datasets without a clear justification for each data element. This approach has raised concerns regarding potential overexposure of sensitive information. Considering the regulatory framework for this exam jurisdiction, which of the following represents the most appropriate best practice for addressing this audit finding? Option A. Update the Workspace 1 UEM configuration to disable the collection of all non-essential sensitive user data, thereby reducing the overall attack surface and the volume of data requiring protection. Option B. Implement granular access controls based on the principle of least privilege, ensuring administrative roles can only access the specific data elements necessary for their defined responsibilities, and enforce encryption for all sensitive data at rest and in transit. Option C. Rely on enhanced user training for administrators to emphasize the importance of data privacy and security, assuming that increased awareness will mitigate the risks associated with broad data access. Option D. Maintain the current broad access policies for administrators, but implement a more frequent audit schedule to detect any potential misuse of data, focusing on reactive rather than proactive security measures. The correct answer is B. Implement granular access controls based on the principle of least privilege, ensuring administrative roles can only access the specific data elements necessary for their defined responsibilities, and enforce encryption for all sensitive data at rest and in transit. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential gap in the organization's approach to managing sensitive data within the Workspace 1 UEM environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing security imperatives with user experience and operational efficiency, all while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing the exam jurisdiction. The core of the challenge lies in determining the most effective and compliant method for data handling and access control. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a layered security model that aligns with the principle of least privilege and data minimization, which are fundamental tenets of data protection regulations. By implementing granular access controls and data encryption at rest and in transit, the organization ensures that sensitive information is protected from unauthorized access and disclosure, thereby mitigating risks of data breaches and non-compliance. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining trust and meeting legal obligations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on broad access permissions without granular controls fails to uphold the principle of least privilege. This can lead to accidental or intentional data exposure, violating data protection regulations that mandate appropriate security measures. Another incorrect approach that neglects encryption for data at rest, even with access controls, leaves sensitive information vulnerable if the underlying storage is compromised, again, contravening regulatory requirements for data security. Finally, an approach that overlies on user education without technical controls, while important, is insufficient on its own. Regulations typically require robust technical safeguards, and relying solely on human behavior is a known weak point in security. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, identifying the types of sensitive data being managed, the potential threats, and the regulatory requirements. This assessment should then inform the selection and implementation of appropriate technical and organizational controls. Professionals must continuously evaluate the effectiveness of these controls and adapt them to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes, always prioritizing compliance and data integrity.